This InDesign video is about adding colors to the swatch palette. It's the easiest and probably best way to add a color or to be able to use them later on in both InDesign and in Illustrator, since they're fairly formatted the same way. I'm going to click over on the swatch panel over here out of my palettes over here. I know that I've got extra colors in here because I can see that this gray scroll bar is allowing me to see a few that aren't listed. So I'm going to grab this bottom right corner. I'm just going to pull down to make sure I've got a little bit of extra space. So I have cyan, magenta, yellow, plus red, green, and blue. If I wanted to add a color, I could do one thing. I could add them by hand by clicking on this button up here in the top right corner. Looks like a little stack or a side view of a sandwich, and I could let go on new color swatch. We're going to get more involved in this as the semester progresses, but I have the ability to pick from preset guides like Pantone color guides or focal tone guides or things like that, or I can simply come in here and use either, if I'm in CMYK, use CMYK mixers or RGB mixers if I'm working on something for the internet. I could come in here and just slide the black to be nothing, and I could sit here and play around until I got a shade of blue that I liked. Once I've done that, I could hit add, and I can either choose to keep the name with color value, to leave the CMYK color breakdown of it in the palette, like some of these are over here, or I could go ahead and uncheck this and I could call it my blue or something like that. And then I could hit add, and then I can click done. So that's now added to my color palette. Another thing I can do is sometimes when I'm placing in a logo or something from some other place, like this one, I'm going to go ahead and see that it automatically added this Walmart orange to the color palette. So somebody saved this color in a way that enabled it to automatically flow into my palette. Problem is that my blue didn't. I'm going to go ahead and throw away my blue just so we don't get them confused. So if that's the case, how can I add this color over there? Well, rather than trying to mix or guess by hand, the simplest thing to do is to go get the eyedropper tool and very carefully make sure that you click not the squeezy black bulb part, but the very white tip somewhere on the color. It'll flash it down here, which means that you could immediately use it, but there's a problem with doing that in that it's not a swatch yet. I would take the time to set it up as a swatch. I'll show you why in just a second. Now that the eyedropper is full of color, it's flipped over and it's pointing in the opposite direction, plus you can see some black ink inside of it. When that's the case, if I go click up here on a new color swatch, it's going to automatically want to flow that color in the whatever color is selected in the actual eyedropper. So I'm going to uncheck this name and just call it Walmart Blue, hit add, and then done. Now I've got that. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that. So now if I come in here and I'm going to go ahead and place some other picture, say this photograph. I could also take a color from within a photograph. So let's say that I was looking for some kind of pink color on the cat's nose or something. The same kind of thing. I can go back and get the eyedropper tool, click on the cat's nose. I can now see that my eyedropper is tilted in the opposite direction and filled with black ink. And I can go over here and to the color swatch palette and add a new color swatch. Again, maybe on this one I'll just call it Rose. The nice thing about having to take the time to do that is that I can use that color fairly quickly. If I was going to add some kind of a rectangle, I can very quickly add any one of those colors to it. Or if I was going to come back in here, and I'm just going to select these two lines of type, and move it back to my page. If I have that particular color selected and I later want to come back in and decide that I don't want to use that, I could always come back into the color swatch, and if I was to double click on the Walmart orange, I could make any kind of adjustment. Let's just say to this to take it to a pure orange, and it automatically changes all the usages of that on the page at a time. If I would have just selected the color from the bottom of the tool palette, never converting into the color swatch palette, and used it, they wouldn't necessarily change as I went along on the page. So there is some value in taking the time to set that up over there. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo to go back to that particular color. So I can use the swatch. I can add colors to the swatch palette by either going up here and typing in a new color swatch by hand, or by loading it from a pre-existing library, or I can actually have sometimes the colors pop in from logos, like this Walmart orange, or other times I can use the eyedropper tool to actually sample a color from a picture, an icon, or something else like that, and be able to import it into the color palette. We'll cover what these different symbols mean in a later video.